Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Everyday Fans podcast. And again, I'm here just talking to everyday fans, letting people talk about stories, how they started following sports, who their favorite teams are. I love those kind of stories, and just had some really good guests on. And I'm happy today to have with me Tim Rose. And how you doing today, Tim?
I'm great, Gary. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I actually met Tim when he was working at a radio station back in Georgia, and I was at the Chamber of Commerce, and we did some things together, promoting events and different things like that. And he has since moved back to Kentucky, where he was from, and doing some real estate there, and also from what he just told me, working a little radio as well. So, Tim, let's just start with so you're from Kentucky and you told me a little bit about some of the teams and things you follow there. How did you really, and I know you're a big sports fan, how did you really get involved in sports? Was it kind of family thing or, how did you get into, following sports like you do?
Family thing for sure. My parents had season basketball tickets at University of Kentucky, went to some football games too, so grew up doing that. Sometimes friends or youth group would go to the Reds games at Riverfront Stadium 80 miles north of Cincinnati. And kids at school, we talked a lot about it. And my older brother, he's 6 years older, and he watched quite a bit of TV, and he was able to when was that? I guess in '81. We got cable when I was 7 or 8 years old, but then you started, at least for baseball, which I think is your favorite sport. You got the Braves, the Cubs. We had both of them televised in almost every game. You get home from school and the Cubs are on WGN. It's either Little House on the Prairie or watch some baseball, and
Right.
Watch Harry Carey. Why not the Cubs? And so it was great marketing, even though both teams most of the time struggled in that era. But you got to see them. You saw the Reds a lot on TV. They won it all my senior year of high school in '90 over the A's. But yeah, I was always into a lot of even stuff like the USFL in the '80s, the summer football league, and that was good for a couple years there, and indoor arena football. I remember on a couple of family vacations going to an arena football game randomly in Denver, and one night you're at the Billy Graham Crusade, the next night you're at a Denver Zephyrs AAA baseball game. And that was one story that was interesting. You went from like 50,000 to see Billy to 3,000 to see baseball. So I guess that was good, in a sense.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I remember arena football was kind of fun to watch. It was exciting sport.
we did it all.
But,
I mean, we played. Yeah, we had wiffle ball leagues in the backyard, and I guess we were younger, had the metal bat with the tennis ball. We couldn't hit it that far then, and then even, like, had a kind of an organized with statistics and all, like, in late in high school and early in college, we had, like, an organized wiffle ball league and played and
wow.
went to Indiana, I think, to go to a tournament one time too, but that was a lot of fun where we had, like, one of the guys even kinda printed out baseball cards of us, and it was a lot of fun. We had fast pitch. It wasn't just the lobbing that you see a lot of places, and so that was a lot of fun too. So, yeah, just kinda always had a lot of fun with sports and enjoying the competition and love watching it and playing it pretty equally, I guess.
Oh, that's great, that's great. So, Kentucky basketball back then was really big. Did did they win a national championship during that time when you were
They
growing up?
yeah, they I didn't remember '78, I was 4 and a half, but they had a
Okay,
dry spell and didn't win it until '96. My
96,
freshman
okay.
year of college at UK was the Leitner shot. Everybody knows, "Oh, the Leitner shot."
Right, oh, yeah,
92,
yeah.
92 at the Spectrum in Philly. So my freshman year, they started getting really good again. Eddie Sutton had a couple good teams. They got on probation in the late '80s. So then Rick Pitino left the Knicks and came and was a savior, and I mean, really built them back to stardom. And they've been good since really the '40s with Adolph Rupp and the fanaticism, having a 23,000 seat arena there. And so just off campus. So Pitino got it going. They won it in '96, and he left. And mistakenly, as he says, he went to the Celtics hoping that Tim Duncan, they'd get the top pick and take him in the draft. They didn't. He gets fired, and Tubby Smith wins it all. Comes from Georgia, had been an assistant under Pitino, went to Tulsa, then went to Georgia, and Georgia fans really still missed him when I was down there living too. They loved Tubby.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
such a good guy, quality guy and coach. And he came, he won it his first year. Surprisingly, that was a shock. And then he was there about a decade, and so they've been. And then Calipari won it in 2012, and kinda got burnt out, I think the fans and him both, and went to Arkansas. So Hope so far in 2 years, kinda mixed reviews. He was a loved guy on those teams back then that won championships, after transferring from Washington. So it's just a different world as we know college sports now with NIL and all that, Gary. I mean, We don't recognize it, do we, too much?
Yeah, it is a lot different, and I've talked about that with a few people, how it's kinda leveled the playing field a little bit, like, a team like Indiana that's never really competed wins a national championship this year. They've been good the last couple years, and, without that the transfer portal especially, and then NIL money, I don't think they would in the past have been able to compete. So it's kind of a catch-22. That's kinda good because it does even things out a little bit. You just don't have, 5 or 6 powerhouse teams that are gonna be the ones in the playoffs every year. But then again, it's kinda getting out of hand because it's almost like at the end of every year, every college player is a free agent. They can go wherever. And,
Mhm.
so you don't have that loyalty to a team and to, different players that you see come through the organization. You don't know who's gonna be there the next year. It's just it's gotten kinda crazy, I think. I think maybe they need to do something to scale it back some. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys, they know they're not gonna make some of them won't get drafted or, make the team, so they're like, "Man, I'm gonna take my half mil or my million a year and go to my 4th team," and there's one guy, I think, quarterback that's been in, like, 6 colleges, so they're, like, mid-20s already balding like Chris Winkie did years ago with Florida State, and, but I mean, you
Right.
can't blame them, and they're taking the money. You can't blame them at
Yeah.
all, and these teams are paying them, but at some point, some of the boosters are gonna be like, "Gotta have an ROI," because a lot of them, especially if they're first generation wealth. I mean, they got where they are by making smart financial decisions. So you would think they'd want, somebody that's going to get teams past the first round of first weekend of March Madness, or make the playoffs in football with the expansion. And it's interesting, Gary, like you said about football, maybe it's level the playing field, but like, let's say a guy has a really great or girl has a really great year at Georgia State or Georgia Southern, but then Georgia Tech or Georgia whomever is gonna Kentucky, Duke, Bama, whomever, they're gonna come calling and maybe poach them. So in some ways, maybe in basketball, it's been tougher on the little guys, maybe in some respects. But like you said, football, the boosters are going crazy with Indiana that had the worst winning percentage of any team that had played football for like 100 years, and it was wild. And so I think it's been a cool underdog story. And it's kind of a blue collar story with Signetti and where he's come from, and, betting on himself. So it's kind of, even though they're a rival, kind of been a neat story as far as that goes.
Yeah, it really has, and that'll be a hard thing too is, you know, Indiana being able to keep him because, every big, school out there is gonna come calling for him at some point, especially when they have a coaching vacancy. He's gonna be a hot commodity. But maybe with like you said, with NIL money and, being able to keep them competitive with the transfer portal and everything, you never know. Maybe they can stay competitive for a long time and keep their coach. Because that's what a lot of the smaller
Right.
schools like that, that's what happens. They get successful, they, make a good run, and then, somebody's gonna come get their coach. You see it all the time. But but yeah, I just think, almost like, if a player goes to a school, maybe they have to commit for at least 2 years or, something to keep this from just being unless there's a before they had hardship things, it started with, like, if a coach leaves, then okay, then the kids can transfer, but now it's just a, wild, wild west. They can leave whenever they want. So maybe if they sign with somebody else, hey, you gotta be there 2 years before you move on. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it
And
just seems
Vandy,
like it's a
yeah.
little out of hand.
Yeah, Vanderbilt's gotten better at sports all around. I think some of their alumni were wait and see, and they're starting to win, so they're adding more to the coffers and more in the offering plate per se, like in for booster money, which has helped Vandy. And you hope, I guess, like if I believe you're a Georgia Tech fan, if you're Brett Key and
Yes.
having a connection already to the school, you're kind of hoping that a guy will it's going to be tougher to poach him, just like the Vandy football coach. It might be a little bit harder to poach him because he's got that connection with the school, being an alumnus of the school.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, and same with Kirby Smart in Georgia. I don't think he's going anywhere. I mean, he's kinda got the best job in the unless somebody pulls him to
Yeah.
the NFL, which you hate to see that. I don't know. A lot of times college coaches don't fare too well in the NFL, but it's yeah, I think he's gonna be there for a while. But yeah, I mean, and Georgia Tech's a successful story with the transfer portal because Haynes King came from Texas A&M, and M, you know, without him the last couple years, they would have struggled mightily, but, he was a great pickup for him, and he stayed, he didn't go anywhere else. But, yeah, I don't know, we'll see what happens. So, switching over to baseball, so you're a Reds fan?
Yeah, I did, and I liked a lot of teams growing up too, but I always liked the Astros for some reason as a kid too. They've kinda dipped now after a good run and not a lot of history of success, but yeah, baseball in general and like to see the Reds do well for sure as well, and, like I said, senior year of high school, they win it all and shocked the A's, and when you look at the rosters, they had no business beating the A's, just like the Dodgers probably
Right.
didn't in '88, but, you gotta play it on the field and gotta have chemistry and working together and have that edge, and so that was a great story, and they honored a few of the players came back going the Reds Hall of Fame a couple weekends ago, which was really neat with
Okay.
Eric Davis and Reggie Sanders. Eric Davis was kind of the hero kinda when I was coming through in middle school and high school because he other than injuries, maybe he was a five-tool guy, might have
He really
made the Hall of
was.
Fame if it wasn't for the injuries, but he just when he had that bat in the batter's box whipping it around, I mean, just you just thought like this guy's a dragon slayer. I mean, he had it all. He was like a 1% body fat. He could jump over the wall and shag rob home runs, had the power and just run like a deer, just, had the whole package.
Yeah, absolutely. Was Barry Larkin on that team? Was he the shortstop then?
Yeah, he came along
Okay.
too in the late '80s. Barry, what, '86 maybe? Him and Kurt Stillwell both. Barry was what played at Michigan, the Wolverines, and they both were there, and then he beat out Stillwell, who I think went to the Royals and had the Hall of Fame career with Cincinnati
Absolutely.
and was there through good times and bad times. And so but yeah, Lou Piniella, the videos with Rob Dibble and all that, and Randy Myers. They had a fun they had an interesting mix up. But yeah, Dibble, as you know that video, there's so many
Oh,
fun
yeah.
videos of Leo, Tommy Lasorda, and my brother's just a big baseball. That's his favorite sport. He's visually impaired, so baseball was always, I think, maybe his favorite sport because he could see it better. It's a slower game. So,
Right.
listening to baseball on the radio, for me, it's like I
Oh,
would
that's
rather almost listen to baseball on the radio than watch it on TV, actually.
absolutely. I mean, I grew up in Atlanta, TBS, and, you know,
Mhm.
day before yesterday, Ted Turner passed away. That was a big story around Braves country, and because he, brought
Yeah.
baseball to the whole country. Like you said, you could watch the Braves and the Cubs, and I know the other owners really didn't like that. They really tried to stop him from being able to do that because, they didn't want the Braves playing in their market because of what happened. And it carried over because, just the Braves were in Colorado recently, the last series, and, you see on TV that half the stadium are Braves fans. It's crazy out,
Mhm.
and I know some people that live in Colorado, and they were before the Rockies came along, the Braves were their team. So there's still a lot of Braves fans out there, but I'm like you, I grew up too, not being able to watch every game on TV if I wasn't home or whatever, and just love listening to the baseball on the radio. You get the description better and, everything. It's just a game that was kinda made for radio. But yeah, I love that too. You know, let me check with your brother. I'd love to have him on too and talk a little baseball if he's willing to do that.
Oh, he'd
But,
love it.
okay, okay, that sounds good.
He knows a lot of old
Um,
Ted Turner. Oh, excuse me, he knows a lot of Ted Turner stories and just, like, Harry Carey as well, but, like, talking about when Ted was fun, he was anti-corporate, he was a really bright guy, and how he according to my brother, like, when he was said, "Oh, I'm gonna pitch this all 24/7 news network," and they teased him and mocked him and said, "Oh, chicken noodle news. It'll never work," and,
exactly.
like, oh, look at him now, he just was filthy rich. He went off to Montana, lived his last several years out there on his ranch, I think, and was in a quiet, peaceful life, and I remember him and Jane falling asleep behind the dugout back in the day
Yeah,
at the game
right,
sometimes, and, remember
exactly.
I remember that, but yeah,
There's some
but yeah, he's my gosh, the stories he could the Rick Camp story too, because John Sterling died this week, sadly, too, that was with the Braves
I
back in the
know.
'80s some when I was watching them growing up, and then he went to the Yankees and had a Hall of Fame career, but he and remembered the Rick Camp's the July 4th game where they lost in 19 innings, but Rick Camp comes off and hits that home run to force another inning, and the fireworks aren't till, like, 4 in the morning probably, and my brother tells a story that Skip Carey got home and the paper boy beat Skip home, and his wife accused him of being out carousing, having an affair because the paper boy beat him home. He's like, "No, honey, it went 19 innings, and then we had fireworks."
Yeah, and the neighborhood was all up in arms about that, shooting off firework because back then, Fulton County Stadium was in a neighborhood in downtown Atlanta, and, yeah, the neighborhood wasn't too happy about shooting fireworks off at 4 in the morning, but I actually remember staying up and watching that game. That was crazy when I was growing up, and, yeah, Skip Carey was a character. He was just one of those announcers you never knew what he was gonna say. But yeah,
No,
great
when I
Ted
moved
Turner
down
stories. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gary. When I moved down, let's see, in '01 to Atlanta to McDonough, and I remember a lot of people, and I'd never listened to the local shows, but like a lot of people were like critical of Skip because apparently, how many times over the decades he had to explain on the pregame or the infield fly rule. And apparently every time somebody called about it, he was rude and degrading to them, apparently, because a lot of people were like, man, he's so rude to the callers. And I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that was kinda got to be I think some people called up and asked about it because he kinda had a call-in show before the game, and people could ask questions, and yeah, he would get a little surly
Uh-huh.
sometimes depending on, what people ask or a little sarcastic, and I think people did it just so he would do that, but for the
Yeah.
most part, yeah, everybody loved him, and he was one that would, the Braves would be losing, 14-2 in the 6th inning or something, and, he would say, "Well, if everybody, if you agree to make sure and, you know, visit our sponsors, you can go ahead and watch something else." He'd just throw stuff out there like that,
I like it.
and,
I
"Feel free to go walk the dog," or
He had
something
so
like
many
that. He was, and Ted Turner was just a character, he managed one game. He made himself manager one game, and Major League Baseball came and said, "No, you can't do that. You gotta hire a manager."
Yes, I remember
But,
it.
he had ostrich races one time. I mean, he just came up with just off the wall stuff to do to try to, boost attendance at the games. But, yeah, he was a character, but a lot of people forget he he was a sailor also. He won the America's Cup back in the '70s, I think it was, which was, one of the as far as the sailing competition, I guess, in the United States. And so, yeah, he had a long life, and he was a character, and it was good that the Braves had him because I don't know that he brought he fired Bobby Cox. A lot of people don't remember that. He was a manager, and he fired him, then he brought him back
Mhm.
as the general manager, and then he kinda moved himself to manager. They hired John Schuerholz, and that kinda started the '90s dynasty that they had. So he was in the middle of all that as well.
Yeah, Schuerholz did a good job building the Royals, being such a successful franchise in the '80s there and brought that over, and I guess Bobby was managing the Blue Jays, and they recruited him back to be manager and, with the Braves, come home, essentially. So what a 14 straight division titles, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I don't know if that'll ever happen again. It's a shame they only won 1 World Series, but,
Yeah.
they had a really good shot at '96 that they lost to the Yankees, but, yeah, it would've been nice to get at least one other one in there during that time, but just wasn't meant to be. And yeah, that's Sherholtz did come from Kansas City, and I actually lived in Kansas City before we moved back to Atlanta. My parents were from Atlanta, but we traveled with my dad's job. So, I was there in Kansas City in the early '70s, I guess, when they first opened Royal Stadium and Arrowhead Stadium, actually. So that was really cool. But when Sherholtz came, one of the people he brought with him and was the groundskeeper, Mangum. And if anybody knows the Braves Fulton County Stadium back in the '70s and '80s, they had some of the worst infield and outfield. I mean, you'd get bad hops all over the place. And they brought him in and they completely redid, the field, and everything was from then on. He just actually retired this year from way back then. But I think that really, when you build a team on pitching and defense, you gotta have a field that holds up. It's so I think that was
Yes.
a big part of them going on that run, especially when you're relying on, pitching as your, kinda backbone of the team.
Yeah, I mean, that Glavine, Smoltz, Avery, just they from the farm, they got those arms. They weren't spending a ton. They build them up from the farm system, and just Pendleton was a much better hitter once he left the big cavernous Busch Stadium and came to the Braves and was an MVP,
Right.
and Justice, just you name them. Ron Gant, before he got injured, they just had so much talent, and like you said, it's a little bit like Calipari with all the one and dones and talent he brought to Kentucky. It's almost like with like Bobby Cox, they were so talented and so good for so long that people expected at least multiple championships, and neither one of them got that second one. But it really shouldn't take away, from what Bobby did because the consistency. Because you had the Mets, the Phillies are big spenders, and Marlins had some runs too. So it's not, just you can't take away what he did, and he was a player's manager. He fought for his players. Gosh, he might lead the number of ejections. I think all time. I forget it. He's up
He does, yeah. He's
there.
it. He's
So
he's the all-time leader.
yeah, and I don't really look at Bobby as the most fiery guy either. I'm thinking, but think of Earl Weaver a little bit and Billy Martin and some of these others, but
Billy Martin, yeah.
but yeah, he definitely stood up for his players, but that was such a fun time. I think more, gosh, Fulton County Stadium it was so electric because they'd been hungry for a winner for so long there, and then, gosh, it's just wild. 3 stadiums now that we've seen kind of in our lifetime, and not
I
as many
know.
big moments at Turner Field.
No. Well, they had
Um,
the '95 World Championship. That was Turner Field.
was that yeah,
But,
okay. I thought was it the Olympics in
well, let's
'96?
see.
I thought it
No,
didn't
no,
open
you're right.
until
That was Fulton County. You're right. It
I
was.
think
It
okay,
was. It was
97, I
90,
guess it
yeah,
opened
so
then?
97. Yeah, 97 it opened. You're right. A
Yeah,
lot of playoff games, but,
yeah.
yeah, no World Series titles in Turner Field. That's true. That's too bad.
Did you think '96 was their best team, Gary? Some have said that.
Um 96 and 97, I think both of those teams were probably the best because at that point you had, Andrew Jones coming up and playing center field, and he didn't start 96. He came up late in the year and then started in the World Series. So I think probably 97 really. It 97, 98 might have been the best teams. But and then 99 they had some injuries. Javi Lopez got hurt and seems like there was another big injury that year. And really, didn't think they would do too good, and they ended up going to the World Series again against the Dodgers. I mean, against the Yankees, they got swept that year, but that was amazing that they even made the World Series in '99. But yeah, I think '97, '98 were probably the 2 best teams.
Yeah. I mean, just and a lot of times had the great lineup, just the bats, great pitching usually beats good offense, and we saw that in I mean, some of the better 91, 92, some of the better World Series of all time, probably. Some think 91 might be one of the best ever, although in a losing cause to
Absolutely.
the Twins, but the bats just kinda went silent sometimes in the playoffs. Like you said, they had some injuries to overcome as well.
Yeah, and that's when they won in 2021, it was really all about it that was more about the bullpen. The bullpen just had an amazing, series, shut everybody down, the Dodgers, especially in the NLCS and then the Astros. And it seems like in the World Series, there's always, you know, not one of the stars that just has an awesome series like Solar for the Braves in 21 and Rosario in the NLCS in 21. I remember when the Royals won the World Series back in the 80s, I think Darrell Porter was their catcher that nobody heard of, and he ended up winning the
Mhm.
MVP because he just had this, awesome series. So it's sometimes it's a little known player or one that's not one of the stars that just steps up and has a great series and ends up, kinda carrying the team through.
Right, you're right, I think maybe in '82 was the first series I remember, the Cardinals and Brewers that went 7, I think, but in '83, if memory serves, it wasn't Eddie Murray or Cal Ripken that won the MVP, it might have been little catcher Rick Dempsey, if I'm
Yeah,
thinking
I think
correctly
so.
on that they when they beat the Phillies. So you
Yeah, I
just
think
like
you're
you
right.
said, they pitch around the studs, you be ready to swing that bat.
Yeah, you never know. Now sometimes the stars come through like Freddie a couple
Yeah,
years ago when
mhm.
he hit the grand slam, that winning the MVP. But, Yeah, you just never know, what's gonna happen. So, Kentucky football, how's Kentucky football looking for the upcoming season? I know the SEC is getting
Yeah,
tougher and
Stoops
tougher,
had
they
a
keep
pretty
adding teams.
Yeah, Stoops had a good run, and then it kinda dipped the last few years, so it was time he moved on. Still had a lot left on his contract, but was able to space out the payments, which helped, and now he's joined Texas, football staff, I think, as a researcher, like a lot of teams are doing now. So they've got Will Stein, who played. He was a quarterback in Louisville, from Louisville, but I think he grew up with his dad going to UK games. He was the offensive coordinator for Oregon, so obviously known for their offense for the last couple
Oh, yeah.
decades. So hopefully, Stoops had a ground and pound, kind of traditional. Got a lot of guys there. The Stoops brothers were from Youngstown, ground and pound a lot, 3 yards, cloud of dust, and really built it from the inside out like Kirby does. I mean, big, upfront, physical, which isn't really what Kentucky's known for historically, getting that kind of talent, but had got some good talent in here. And then it kind of fizzled out toward the end, and they got to where, you can't win games averaging 20 points a game anymore. So they're hoping Stein can reinvigorate the program, and always excited for I think they'll know a lot right away. I mean, they've got Alabama coming in here week 2, and then they go to
Oh,
A&M.
wow.
They got A&M week 3 in College Station, so they'll know pretty quickly we're going to 9 games. Like you said, the schedule's tough, so I think, I don't it'd be a miracle if they win 6 games and go to a bowl this year, but they're hoping that, it's good in this NIL era. Maybe he can, it's a little tougher too. You got basketball, which is so important in Kentucky too. So, if you're at an Ole Miss, the booster, it's a lot harder convincing a booster to spend money on basketball down there. They all wanna give it to football, and regardless of how
Right,
successful a program traditionally has been. So, but up here, where, it's more balanced, and how you've got so much football, basketball tradition. So Stoops, one time in an interview a few years ago, wasn't a good look, but I think one time in a post game said, "Pony up," basically like, "I need more money," basically from
right,
the fan base. If I'm going to afford these guys and all that. And I mean, they've done a really good job with facilities, the game experience, game time experience, game day experience. So, but we'll find out. And that's kind of, how demanding Alabama is, and post Saban, that'll be a tough. That could be the beginning of the end for DeBoer. You never know
oh,
if they were able to, if they were to lose that game, there'd be some buzzards for sure, around Tuscaloosa the next week. But so that's probably probably more pressure on DeBoer in week 2 than Stein. Probably, I don't think people are going to predict Kentucky to win that one.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, and a first-year coach gets
Yeah.
some leeway, that happens. When Brent Key came back to Georgia, he, didn't have a great year, kind of the last half of the year played better, but, I think now he's kinda won over the fan base, but, it's all about what have you done for me lately, so that can go away really quick, if you have a couple bad years, but yeah, that'll be interesting because yeah, like you said, he can get in there and, maybe not this first year, but start using the portal and get some NIL money behind him and, get some players in there that can turn it around pretty quick. But, eh,
Yeah.
just speaking of that, of the SEC and how many teams are in it, what do you think about some of this realignment that, when you have 17, 18 teams in a conference, it just seems a little, over the top to me.
Yeah, I like 10 to 12. I think it was always neat on weekends, Saturday in the fall, road fans, it's drivable pretty much to all the road games. I mean, you might have to spend a night, but it's almost drivable, or to break up a couple of days driving from Kentucky to Florida, for example. But now that I think years ago when Boston College left for the ACC, that's when I first saw the trickle, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. It's still Atlantic Coast. Like the Pacific 10 was always kind of the entire from Washington to Arizona, but that's just totally out of region. And that's going to be, you like to see, it's not basketball, you don't expect it, but football, it's kind of a
Right,
cool tradition, with your grandpa, with your dad, whatever, going on these road trips, maybe one a year, one every few years, whatever it may be. And that was so much fun. So, they're going to go back to having more variety, because for a while, like, A&M's been in the league now over a decade, and Kentucky's never hosted A&M in football. They've been down to college. This will be the second time they've been to College Station, but there hasn't been enough variety. But I think now that they're only going to have 3 permanent opponents, they're going to see each other more, which is better, which is better
right.
too. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't like it. It's gotten kind of out of hand with the wackiness. And when West Virginia's against Texas Tech and the Texas schools and Arizona, and that makes it harder on recruiting. when you got guys in maybe Pennsylvania that have come to West Virginia for years, but the parents can't go. They can't maybe afford to fly across the country to see them in Austin or Lubbock, wherever, not Austin anymore, but Tucson. That's harder. But yeah, I'm kind of showing my age, but I like it when it's more compact where, you have regions, at least with the for the most in Missouri feels more like a Midwestern team, but at least with the SEC, you've got 2 time zones and not you don't have a 3-hour difference between you got Rutgers playing USC. It's really wacky, especially for the non-revenue sports like during the week and all that flying. I know there's a lot of remote learning now, but it's just it's different. It's different for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, Stanford's in the ACC.
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
That really made the Atlantic Coast, Stanford, Palo Alto's on the is that in the Low Country of South Carolina? Last check?
Yeah, exactly. You would think. So, yeah, that's just gotten a little crazy. I don't know if they'll do anything, make any changes to that, but and I know it's all, it's about money. The schools are looking for their best fit where they can be successful as well. So, and I guess the Pac-10, USC and UCLA was all that was left, right? So are they gone this year? I don't
Or Washington
remember
State.
how.
Yeah,
Oh,
Washington State and
okay,
Oregon State were the last 2 standing, so I think they're adding maybe Nevada. I don't know if Boise State, some of the other teams out there, they're adding San Diego State, maybe they're adding them and kinda recreating the Pac-10 again,
okay,
but
out of the
not as
Mountain
strong a
West or
league.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, maybe merging kinda with the Mountain West, so that's, the best they can do, but it's tough to see, yeah, if Oklahoma and Oklahoma State aren't playing anymore, and I remember when Kansas and Missouri were a huge basketball rivalry, and they didn't play anymore. A&M and Texas for a long time didn't. That's good they're back, but, like,
right,
it just really
exactly.
killed these natural historic rivalries. Like, "What are you all doing?" It's, all about the almighty dollar and all that, and so, I mean, it's just a yeah, like we've said other things on the show, a lot different. It's a totally different world now, and, with they just say, "Oh, we can fly across the country, no big deal," and, so
Yeah, I grew up with the Southwest Conference where almost all the teams were in Texas.
except Arkansas,
Yeah,
except the
exactly,
Hogs. Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, I remember that fondly, but yeah, I think I'd love to see him get back to 10 or 12 teams where and even where you have the divisions where, the division winners, play in the championship game. I guess now it's just the top 2, but there's so many teams and they don't all play each other, so, you know, conceivably you can have, 4 or 5 one-loss teams at the end of the season, and then you have all the tiebreakers and everything to see, who's gonna make the championship game, which really, especially in the, bigger conferences, means a lot as far as the playoff brackets go for the national championship. So it's, yeah, it's interesting. I'd love to see them get back to 10 or 12 teams in a conference, but probably not gonna happen at this point.
Yeah, it seems like if anything, they'll just get larger, maybe 2 mega conferences, I don't know, and they just added 8 more teams to the March Madness basketball-wise too, but
That's
in football,
crazy.
we've got
That's
12.
just
Yeah, 64
yeah,
was my
70
fi I thought a perfect number, but yeah.
yeah, I
76,
know.
is it?
76 is crazy. Yeah, I couldn't believe I read that and I said, "Surely this is a joke." You don't know anymore on the internet,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess it's really happening, so, yeah, that's almost yeah, I guess it's gonna add a whole 'nother week to the playoff, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if in date like, if you're Coastal Carolina or Georgia State, win your regular season and your conference, lose in your conference tourney, and then you're one of those extra teams now, I totally support that, but I think mostly what will happen is the bubble teams that like the Auburn, Indiana this year and Oklahoma that didn't deserve to be in the tournament, based on regular season merit are going to make it. And you might have some
Right,
coaches save their jobs when they went from 64 to 68. Like, oh, okay, they're just going to help Syracuse or whomever. The guy's not going to get fired because he made the tournament. He may be one and out, but like it may save some jobs. But I mean, if it helps the little guys, maybe that's better. They get a chance to win a tournament game, all that. But apparently, it's still going to start on Thursday, which most of us traditionalists think that's when the tournament really starts anyway. When we're down to
right,
64. So they'll
exactly.
add, yeah, I guess Tuesday, Wednesday. Maybe I guess they'll have 2 different sites because now they play, 2 games Tuesday, 2 Wednesday in Dayton. So they'll be adding, adding a few more to that. But, yeah, there will be I guess, there's always gonna be change as our forefathers would tell us, I guess, about life.
True. Well, and how many years did they say they absolutely were not gonna have a playoff in football, but you always knew it was
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah,
'Cause
you
they had
did.
to, and
Yeah, you did.
I
We love
really
New Year's
thought
Day. I mean,
oh, yeah. Yeah. And I really thought I know it's the way they're doing this now is okay, but I really thought 8 was a good number when there were 5 power conferences and you could have, like, okay, the 5 conference champions and then, like, 3 wild cards, the top teams out of the
yeah.
left out of those conferences. Perfect number, you know, placement, but
Yeah.
then they, went to 12 and now I hope they don't expand that anymore. I don't know. It just seems like they're going
They
to, and it's
probably
gonna
will,
get
but yeah,
tough. Yeah.
yeah,
And it'll be like
awkward
the,
buys,
you
the
know,
awkward how do you yeah.
I almost like the NFL where they've expanded with the wild card team so much, and now you have the Super Bowl used to be mid-January, and now the Super Bowl's in February,
Hmm.
and it's just gonna continue to push back when the championship games are. But, yeah, I don't know. If they'd let us, we could fix it, Tim.
I know, we should be commissioners and presidents and all that because that's yeah, too many all the every round in the NBA playoffs, best of 7, it takes 3 months or whatever, and you lose some momentum, I think, maybe as well, but yeah, college football, I like round numbers, like, I don't the buys I thought were awkward, the 12, so, like, either do 8 or 16, we don't want 24, just do something round, like, no and I don't yeah, it's just and, of course and they're playing in some frigid tundra, some of them too, but yeah, I mean, keep it at 8, have it at 8 or 16, and then just utilize the other bowls for the other teams, and it's still
Right.
not for the big boys, but for the other conferences, if you're Tulane or somebody, it's still good going to a pretty solid bowl
Good
like the
bowl
Holiday
game.
Bowl or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, go to a bowl game, enjoy the time, and, yeah, my dad posed a question the last 2 years, he's like, "Do you think anybody" and I thought he was crazy when he asked me, but he's like, "Do you think anybody would just" but his point was, I think, "Would you think anybody would enjoy just experience of going to the bowl, a bowl game experience instead of going to the playoff?" I'm like, "No, you gotta be crazy," but I guess if you think about being there the whole week and being spoiled, unlike you coming in as a you're coming in as a villain as you fly in if you're SMU flying into Happy Valley or something, and you're in the frozen tundra almost for a playoff game, it's not like you're at the Bahamas Bowl or something like that?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's true. That's true.
Um,
Wow. Well, I tell you what, Tim, I really enjoyed it. I kinda try to keep these 30, 45 minutes, so coming up on a little time here. But thank you so much for being a guest, and we'll definitely stay in touch. And I kind of want to talk to you again. We'll get into maybe when the college football season starts, get back and talk a little more Kentucky. But also, since you kind of do some broadcasting with high school sports, kind of want to talk to you a little bit about that when we come back next time, and kind of the you know where high school sports are right now. And I don't know about the high schools up in Kentucky, but I know some of them you got recruiters out here recruiting 8th and ninth graders and things like that. That's kinda getting crazy as well, but we'll delve into that next time. But again, thank you so much for being here on as a guest.
you're welcome, Gary. Thank you so much. I greatly enjoyed it. Look forward to doing it again.
Alright, we'll talk to you soon.